Hazel. Queen's Service Medal, which was announced yesterday in the awards lists. Well done. And I think I speak for the whole committee when I say it was an acknowledgement of your years and years of service, which was really something that our community can be proud of having you with us for. You know, it's people like you and your associates who make our communities what they are, and certainly it's been a long time coming, Hazel. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I think Gary and maybe even Jim wanted to say a few words.
Oh,
perhaps yeah, well, I was going to defer to his worship, but yes, thank you, Hazel, for everything you've done. I've been in council for a long time, and I think you've been there just about as long in one way or another. But look, thank you sincerely, the people of Kihiki, folks in Grey Power, folks associated with all those wonderful developments you've been spearheading in Kiki, including the Kiki domain, the Ratatu Reserve, all of those things. So much energy and passion, and so look, thank you sincerely for everything you've done, both for the council and for the staff at Waipa.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Thank you. But you know, it didn't happen without you too. Oh, sorry, Jim.
Look, just confirming sort of Gary's comments, Hazel, but we have spoken, but yeah, huge congratulations from me. Look, a fantastic life of service. I really was blown away by the resume, I suppose, that was put together for the award, and the amount of service that you've given, not only from a council perspective, but to the community, was absolutely huge. So a huge congratulations from me, and it's great to be able to pass on those best wishes without it being, as your daughter was putting together your nomination and talking to you as if it was your eulogy. So it's great to be able to compliment you without it being in that sort of circumstance. So look, huge congratulations and thanks from the community for everything you've done.
Oh, thank you, Jim. Thank you. That was it was a pleasure and an honour to receive it. And I think it meant I had to give up some things, but the outcomes of for the community and the people that actually I worked with was just made it all very, very worthwhile. So thanks very much.
Great. Well done, Hazel. Congratulations.
Thank you, Susan.
So without further ado, let's move on to our agenda, which I understand you should all be looking at on our new e-governance platform, Diligence. Have we all found where we should be? Excellent. We're on the first page there, or actually second page of our agenda. We have two apologies, I believe, Graham and Bruce. Bruce is trapped at Pauanui, which is terrible. He must be really hating that. So I have those two apologies. We didn't have any more than that, did we, Jenny?
No, just the two.
Excellent. And moving on then to disclosures of members' interests.
Just need to move the second.
Sorry, yeah, Roger threw his hand up there, as did Claire. So Roger, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right, moving on to disclosure of members' interests. Do we have any? Don't believe we have any conflicts today. Nobody contacted me about that. Excellent. Fantastic. Late items. I'm not aware that there are any late items to be brought up today. So moving on then to fifth item on our agenda was confirmation of the order of the meeting. Order, as I understand it, as it appears in the agenda. I have recommendation there. Is somebody happy to move that for me? Mike, and second and Claire. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Okay, so we'll move on to the confirmation of minutes there on page 3. As is our usual practice, I'll just cite the numbers of the pages of the actual meeting minutes, and if somebody has an issue with them, they can just alert me to it. So that's page 4 and 5, 6 and 7.
Susan?
Claire?
Yeah. On page 6, I just wanted to query something. Oh, sorry. you know, it's to do with the newspapers advertising again. I think it's the paragraph number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's the 4th line. Because we had quite a bit of talk about how we would get the message out to the community, and it's more that newspapers were being delivered again, you know, because there was a time when they weren't even being produced. Yeah, not so much advertising. So I just wondered whether or not we could change that advertising to were being delivered again.
Yeah, that makes sense, because that was what the point was, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we're taking out advertisements in the newspaper.
Yeah. So Jenny, are we able to change that? It was advised that the newspapers were being printed or being delivered again.
That's fine. No, I can change that.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks for that, Claire. So then pages 7 and 8. And then 9 and 10. 11 and 12. No, all good, notwithstanding that one small change that Claire alerted us to. So I have a recommendation then appearing on page 3 that the minutes be circulated, read and confirmed as true and correct. Have anybody's have to move that? Marcus, thank you. Seconded Phil. All those in favour say aye.
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 Against? Carried. Excellent. Right, moving on then to our first substantive matter on our agenda, which is the fire control matter. I'm still trying to navigate my way around here. It's appearing on page 13, Amendment to the Fire Control Bylaw 2015, and I believe Graham Pollard is taking us through this matter. Take it away, Graham. Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. This item is to change a resolution from December 2019's meeting of this committee. You may recall that the committee resolved to recommend to Council adoption of a new fire control bylaw. However, before we could actually bring this to Council in December, we got some further legal advice that said that even though we were actually removing about 80% of the bylaw, it was actually an amended bylaw rather than a new bylaw. There's this sort of fine line between when an amendment becomes so big that it's actually a new bylaw. But it's quite important in this case because under the amendments in the Fire and Emergency New Zealand Act that was amending the Local Government Act in terms of consultation, we don't need to consult on this bylaw change if it is an amended bylaw, but we do if it is a new bylaw. So in the circumstances at the moment, we probably have bigger issues to consult on than some amended clauses of a bylaw. So what we're asking for today is to revoke December's resolution and replacing it with a new resolution that the committee recommends Council adopts an amended Fire Control Bylaw 2015. You've got in the appendices of the report what the amended bylaw will look like. So lots of clauses are showing as deleted. And in the second appendix, you can actually see what is proposed to be taken out because it's no longer part of Council's jurisdiction. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take questions.
All right. Does anybody have any questions or
Yeah, through you,
Graham? Claire.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Graham. There were just a few inconsistencies that I wanted to check out, and I didn't have a chance to send them through prior to the meeting. The first is on if you go to the track changes version, and the table of contents at the bottom, there's schedules 1 and 2 for vehicle tyre storage or something, and they're not deleted from the table of contents, but in actual fact they have been deleted from the body.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also queried the need for the definition of are restricted fire areas. Like I think there's maps at the back that show permanently restricted fire areas for the urban areas or residential areas of the district. But in actual fact, it only applies for getting permits, and now we don't need to get permits. So I don't know if they need it anymore.
I recall that we had sent this through Helen Atkins for legal review, and this has come out okay. But I can double check on that.
Yeah, because our bylaw now only deals with nuisance fires.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that I picked that up on page 6 of the bylaw. Yeah, and then the last thing was on page 47, which says about actually, the foregoing bylaw has been made by the council by special consultative procedure. Well, we're not following a special consultative procedure now, are we?
Not in this case, no. So
No.
there's
So
sorry,
whether or not
direct me to the page again. This is right at the
end on page 14 of the.
Through you, Madam Chair, just if I could respond to that point, just that the bylaw itself, the original bylaw made in 2015 did progress through a special consultative procedure, and this is simply an amendment to it, so that does remain true for the bylaw as a whole.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so those are the only points.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for that, Claire. So Graham, are you just able to clarify that with us in terms of the first matter raised then by Claire?
In terms of the fire permits and the fire areas, yes, I can double check back on that.
Brilliant, excellent. Now, Roger, were you waving your hand around? Roger has a question.
I was, and it's Graham, just through you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification, really. I accept the fact that we've got bigger fish to fry currently, and quite happy with the fact that it's an amended bylaw, but it does look a lot messy. Will there be opportunity in the future to clean it up and make it an easy to follow bylaw? Because I think anybody looking at it now would have a difficulty going through all of the amendments and deletions.
Indeed, that's one of the reasons why I preferred originally to create something separate, but just working on the advice we've got. With all bylaws, there are opportunities to review them further, and we've got a chance to look at this again in another 10 years' time, or at any other time. All bylaws have to be reviewed within a maximum of 10 years. So there may be opportunities to bring these provisions into another bylaw in the future, as we consolidate.
So what we've got is what we live with. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It should do the job, which is one of the main things we're trying to achieve.
Yep.
Thank you, Graham. Any other questions for Graham? No, none out there. Okay, so I have a recommendation there appearing on page 14. A, B and C. First is obviously to receive the report. B is to revoke parts C and D of our earlier resolution of our meeting on the 4th of December and further determine that the draft amendment fire control bylaw 2015 is the most appropriate method and form of addressing council's fire control responsibilities. And then the third recommendation is to recommend that we approve the proposed amendments to the fire control bylaw 2015 as set out in Appendix 1. And it's to be effective the 1st of July. Can I have anybody who's happy to move that for me? Marcus, and seconded Liz. All those in favour say aye.
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 Those against? Carried. Excellent. Thank you very much, Graham.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next item, which is the District Plan Work Programme, which I believe we have Tony Quickfall here to present for us. So this is appearing on page 63. It starts on page 63 of our agenda. Good morning,
Good
Tony.
morning, Madam Chair. Morning, councillors, Your Worship. So this is an update report, and probably from this point going forward, we'd like to probably take this to the committee on a regular basis, just because of a work program around plan changes, which is fairly ambitious, I suppose. So by way of update, I'm looking at under item or paragraph 3. We've got a district plan work program which comprises of 5 work streams. So we've got a plan changes work stream, national planning standards, E-plan, national directions, and legislative changes. I'll take the report as read, but I will just take you through a summary if that's okay.
Thank you.
So we do have a suite of plan changes which we've, programmed as different types. So we've got 7 do now plan changes, 3 do next, and at least 2 private. And just as an example of how the work or this particular work stream is quite agile, there's some updates since this report was written that I'll take you through. So under 3.1, we talk about 2 plan changes had already been started and underway. There's another 2 I'd like to add to that. So plan change 15, which is around permeable surfaces, and plan change 16, which is technical improvements. So those ones we're now considering as having been started. Plan change 14. So in the report, we talked about notification 2020/2021. As a result of a meeting with the landowner on Friday, we're now looking at potentially notifying that one October 2021. So I haven't even had the chance to update our workstream program around that yet. So this is an example of how we're quite agile around the space. So I'll just take those other ones here as read. I'm happy to take questions later on any of those specific plan changes. The do next, so we've got some infill subdivision that we will be looking at. That's quite a big plan change on its own. And also that aligns with the National Planning Standard for Urban Development. Rather than, well, there's 2 issues around that. We don't have resources at the moment to commence that, but also the risk of going ahead and doing that now would mean that we may end up with a plan change that we need to change later on once the NPS comes out. So I think it's prudent to hold off on that one. We do have a council plan change on our program around Māori sites, significance in Papakainga. So again, quite a body of work around that, and that's one that we'll be doing at a later stage. And the third one is around rezoning, just rationalising some zoning. The reason that's on a do next is because the time frame is a little bit uncertain around those. So we're waiting for other factors to, I guess, advise us and inform us when those might happen. The National Planning Standards, so just a reminder that that's a government requirement where all district plans are reformatted into a consistent standard. We do have a deadline around that of 2026. We've deprioritised that at the moment because some of these plan changes we're quite keen to get up and away. So Julie's done a fair bit of work on that already, but that's kind of on hold at the moment. Under 3.3, the E-plan, so again, as part of the National Planning Standards, we do have to have an interactive electronic district plan up and running by 2026. So separately to this report, we do have an e-solutions program of work, which the council is rolling out. E-plan is part of that. So all going well, we anticipate hopefully that the budget will be confirmed for that through the annual plan, and then we can start looking at procurement for an E-plan platform. National directions, there hasn't been a lot of activity with COVID around that nationally. However, there's still a couple that we anticipate coming into force in the next few months. We haven't had any updates from central government around that. So that's around biodiversity, urban development, highly productive soils. And each of those will probably require that we make changes to our plan, mandatory changes without going through a consultative process. And there may be some consequential changes there as well. Just finally, there are 3 legislative changes that will impact the work program. So the first one you may be familiar with is a bill that's progressing under urgency to fast track some COVID projects around through resource consenting. So there'll be some criteria around that, and the process as we understand it's a bill at the moment. The process as we understand it is any applicant with those kind of projects could apply to the Minister. The Minister makes the determination, and if he agrees that they are candidates for fast tracking, then that would go through a process. It may not even have a hearing. There may be no consultation. So it's quite a streamlined process, and the Minister makes a decision around that. Council's involvement in that at the moment is minimal. So if there's an application in a particular area, then the minister can invite someone from the council to be part of that decision-making body. And also the minister can invite some feedback from, I guess, council staff at a technical level, but there's no mandate to do that. So we'll see where that one ends up. I think Local Government New Zealand has put a submission in asking for a bit more involvement at a local level. There's two other legislative activities underway. So one is the bill to amend the RMA. That's coming very close to enactment. That reinstates parts that were previously repealed, so there's no real impact on our business as usual. It introduces a new fast-track hearing process for freshwater plans, which doesn't really affect us directly, but it also strengthens enforcement powers, so the Environmental Protection Agency will have more powers around enforcement than they haven't had previously, which is a good thing for us because it means if we're in a situation where we need to get some extra support around enforcement, we can shoulder tap the EPA to get some support around that. And the final one is a comprehensive overhaul of the RMA. Some intel from the ministry officials last week was that they're expecting still the technical advisory group to report back July on that, around their recommendations, and then a cabinet paper will follow. So that's still on track. So as you can see, quite an ambitious work program we've got there. Plan changes is our priority at the moment. We're confident we do have the budget and resource to manage that, but we'll need to keep quite a close eye on how that's tracking through the process, and happy to take questions.
Thanks very much, Tony. That's yeah, you're right. It's a pretty ambitious work plan, but I'm sure with your motivated team, you'll knock it off one by one. Claire, have a question there?
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Tony, I'm really happy with the program as it stands, and I think that you've got a great team there working really hard for us. The question I have is not particularly related to those issues, but more that in Auckland, there's been a thing about water tanks or rainwater tanks, and that they're classified as a building, you know, under the unitary plan, and so people need resource consents. Like, what's the situation in Waipa if people wanted to put a tank in there? There aren't those sort of hurdles that people face here, are there?
I don't know the Building Act well enough to know what the requirements of the Building Act are around, but I do know that you can get slimline tanks that aren't classified as a building. So I'd be thinking that there's options for people to put in water tanks if they want to. I don't think there's any impediments in our district plan for doing that, but there's also no compulsion, so we don't require people to do that.
Yeah, okay. It just seemed to be a topical thing, and like I think Auckland Council's coming under fire because they've made it difficult in the past for people to take that kind of sensible action to, conserve the water. So, you know, I suppose that they don't need to take so much from water care, and I just wondered how we were placed. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Claire. And does anybody else have any questions for Tony? No? Excellent. Right, so on page 63 itself, we just have the one recommendation there just to receive Tony's report, Total District Plan Work Programme. Andrew, happy to move. Phil, happy to second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against, carried. Excellent. Thanks very much, Tony. Best of luck with that. Right, moving on to the next item, which appears on page 69 of our agenda, which is the Rata 2 renaming item. And I believe we have Anna McElray here for this. Good morning, Anna.
Morena, thank you, Madam Chair. Morena koutou. Look, this is a project that started before my time and is well underway in terms of the enhancement works and getting those all done for the New Zealand War commemorations in October. Luckily, with level 4, we were still able to progress and we're working with the archaeologist and Heritage New Zealand to get the necessary approvals to do the works. Rob Sinclair, our project manager, is working hard now, and there'll be seeding in spring for those works. When we went to Ngāiwi Tōpu at the end of last year to talk to them about the works, Harold Maniapoto raised that the correct name for the area is actually Tūrata rather than Rata 2. And he pointed us in the direction of a written reference that's on the Māori Affairs website, which is quoted in the report. And following that, we went to Maniapoto Kitaraki's hui in February, and again it was confirmed that the correct traditional name is Tūrata for the area. We followed up with DOC to confirm what would be the process we'd have to follow to change the name, and they confirmed that it wouldn't need to be a formal Reserves Act process, given that that name is a name just to identify a number of land parcels and not specifically a reserve name. And so we went to the Te Awamutu Community Board last month. They endorsed the name change, and today we're seeking your approval to make that change. And so that will be for obviously some reserve signage on site, the council website, any information relating to the area, and also letting our lessees and other stakeholders who refer to the area to update them on the name change. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Anna. Hazel.
I'd like to move the recommendation, but also to say that there you've gone through all the official channels, but there are many senior Māori people here in Kihikihi who will be very pleased to see the name corrected. They don't have to say it quietly under their breath to us anymore. It's really Tūrata. So I'm absolutely delighted to recommend that this be official.
Great, thank you, Hazel. Did anybody have any questions or comments, or are people happy to second?
I'll second that motion, Madam Chair.
Marcus or Mike, were you seconding or were you commenting?
I have a question. Yeah. And I just noticed on page 70 of the report that you're going to put a fence around the water tower and remove the shed. Well, is there any plan for the actual water tower to like remove it as well, because it's not a historical thing?
Oh, can I?
Hazel.
Can I make a comment here? Marcus, through you, Madam Chair. Marcus, this was discussed a few years ago when it all came up about tidying up that reserve. And yes, it was marked for demolition, but the community raised up on their back legs and said they didn't see why. For them, it was a landmark. So okay, it's not a historic thing there, but that was how it stayed in the plan, because they're going to remove those old sheds around it and tidy it all up. But yeah, so whether you want to revisit that, but the community very loudly told us that if it wasn't causing any harm and it wasn't in anybody's way, please leave it there, fence it off, and so that kids can't go climbing up in it when we officially get the park sorted out. But that's the only reason that it survived, a community demand.
This might be due for another discussion, because the community that I talk to don't actually see it as a significant thing and would much rather have something planted there, or something that has more historical connections to the area, rather than a concrete water tower that my dad can remember being built.
Sally, I see you're waving your hand around there.
Thank you, through the chair. Back in these service delivery committee meeting, we agreed that this was an initial works that we were doing in terms of the war commemorations that were coming up, and that we would look at future items within the reserve at a later date when there was further funding to do that. So just remembering back to service delivery committee, that the decision was based on doing these initial works first, and part of that was just for health and safety reasons that we would be fencing off the water tower until we looked at that again further.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Sally. Anna, did you have a comment to make?
Just in addition to what Sally said, part of the scope of works is that we are commissioning an engineering assessment of the water tower, so that will enable those future discussions to understand the costs in retaining it and making it safe, but also costs in removing and re-establishing.
Great, thank you, Anna. Mike, did you have something to add?
Yeah, it was just a question of understanding, really. For Anna, when you mentioned the stakeholders that have been mentioned with the name change, I'm just wondering, when we make name changes like this to reserves, or maybe to lanes or crescents, etc., is Google informed in terms of Google Maps and that sort of thing? Is that relevant or not? It was just a general question.
Great question. Yes, very relevant. And I'm not quite sure of the process we need to go through to do that, but we will be updating, obviously, our map layer, and then I'll follow that up as well.
Great, thank you. And Marcus.
Actually, Mike, can we borrow your water tower? Because aren't we looking for a new location for that?
Save the cameras, ratepayers some money. Cool, you can have it for free.
Good luck moving it.
Negotiation on the Cambridge water tower.
All right, have we got any other comments or questions for Anna or Sally on that matter? Because I have Hazel having moved the name change. Do I have somebody who's happy to second that? Marcus, you're happy to second it? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against? Carried. Well done, people. Thank you, Anna. Well done. Okay, so moving on then to the next item, which is a resolution to exclude the public, appearing on page 74 of our agenda. Do I have somebody who's happy to move that for me? Claire and seconded Elwyn. All those in favour say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against? Carried. We just have to pause here while